to information as the ultimate nexus of control. So now that you know how information control actually works and how it all plays out, I want to introduce you to a new concept, and this concept is called 5GW, or it's otherwise known as fifth generational warfare. Fifth generational warfare. Which also implies that there are 4 previous generations of warfare, which is true. My argument to you, understanding how this information control network works, is that we are in a state of war. Right now, right this moment, we are in a state of war. And that war is called 5GW, fifth generational warfare. Now, 5GW is the current iteration of multiple generations of warfare. And I'm going to go through each generation quickly so that you can understand why we're here and how we're here. I'm also going to explain what 5GW actually is. But when I say that I think that we're at war, that is not metaphor. I genuinely believe that we are in a state of warfare, and that people don't even realise, people don't even know that we're in a state of warfare. Now, if you want to learn more about this before I get into it, I thoroughly recommend this book. It's called The Handbook of Fifth Generation of Warfare, edited by Daniel H. Abbott, and it's a really fascinating book. I thoroughly recommend it. So if I don't do a very good job of explaining it, which I'm sure that book does a hell of a lot better than I do, then you can go and you can read that, and it'll be really useful for you, I promise. So GW basically means generations of warfare, and 0GW was tribal. Okay, it was tribal warfare. There were no nation states. Okay, there weren't nation states at all. It was close quarters combat, so we're talking, like swords. There we go, dodgy sword. It was swords. It was shields. It was close quarters, and it was tribal. Okay, that was 0GW, the first generation of warfare. Okay, swords, spears, shock tactics, simple projectiles, arrows, slings, limited logistics, and how this worked. There were tribal skirmishes. Right, you had one set of warriors against another set of warriors. Now that transitioned from 0GW to first generation warfare. First generation warfare, this all changed with the nation state. So the concept of the nation state meant that for the very first time, you could have what was called massed manpower. So it meant that for the very first time, rather than having maybe 100, 150, maybe 200 odd men, maybe a few more, as small skirmishes or Viking style raiding parties, you now had massed manpower. You now had this concept of the nation state, which meant you could amass thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And this was the beginning of what we call line and column. So line and column meant that you'd have men in a line, men in a column, and you have exactly the same thing. And then you could have strategies around these line and column formations. You could also start using, cannon, gunpowder, horses. We're talking large-scale warfare. Really large-scale warfare. And this was state-controlled. Yeah, so no longer just tribal, it was also state-controlled. So that was 1GW. And the best example I can give you of 1GW was Napoleon. Napoleon was an absolute... it was just brilliant. at first generation warfare, right? They used mass infantry, very advanced. It was artillery barrages, and it decided battles. You know, also if you're American, the American Civil War also had elements of first generation warfare as well. So that's 1GW. Second generation warfare was all about the what? The trench. The whole point of 2GW is that you would use attrition to wear down your enemy with industrial scale warfare. So this was really intense. You'd have tons and tons and tons of artillery, firepower, and you would just be hammering all the time. These were ginormous, synchronized assaults of not only heavy weapons as firepower, but you'd also get very, very early levels of machinery as well. Such as tanks. You know, very early tanks, very early automobiles designed for war, right? So it was very much about digging in and surviving the onslaught of industrial scale trench warfare. And of course, the best example I can give of this is the dreaded World War I. Yeah, this is the perfect example. So now the psychology for this World War I style second generation warfare was around obedience. You know, we're going over the top, lads. Let's do it. It was all about obedience. It was all about command and control. And they had what was called conducted battles. So they had arenas, or they had theatres of war which they had put focus on at certain times. Millions upon millions upon millions of men died in World War I doing this kind of warfare, because it's just one of the most darkest parts of European history is World War I. That is second generation warfare, industrial scale warfare. Third generation warfare is obviously, guess what? World War II. Now the difference between World War I and World War II was very much something called Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg was this notion that you would have sea, land, and air all simultaneously. And that your land divisions would move very quickly in order to encircle. So we'll just do this. In order to encircle other armies and cut them off from supply. So you were able, using speed, using precision, using manoeuvring, to get an extreme advantage over your enemy. Because until this time, no one had ever seen manoeuvring and speed this quickly before. It was all about surprise. I mean, you imagine that for the very first time that you would have hundreds and hundreds of aeroplanes, plus you had bombardment via artillery, plus you had mechanised tanks and mechanised infantry, all coming at the same time. These tactics, what we call non-linear. Okay, they were non-linear. It wasn't just go and attack in formation. It was all about these combined arms, air support, infantry. Let's say there's a stronghold here. Well, then what they do is they just go around the stronghold, right? They wouldn't just go and attack. They would go around the enemy, creating like I mentioned before, cutting off them from supplies, creating confusion and chaos. So the focus here was speed and manoeuvring. That was the main change. That was the main shift. Okay? Another example, by the way, is the Gulf War against the Iraqis. That was when 3GW was also introduced to. Fourth generational warfare is a big leap. Up until 4GW, everything was centralized. Even when you had, 0GW, you had centralized skirmishes within a village. But 4GW takes this centralized thing, says, right, we're going to decentralize. And this is the beginning of terrorist insurgency. This is all about guerrilla tactics. Okay? So these non-state actors or terrorists, what would they do? They wouldn't just use what we call kinetic warfare. They wouldn't just use kinetic warfare. They would use psychological warfare. They would also use manipulation. So that much larger militaries couldn't really understand what's going on. They would conduct guerrilla attacks that were inexpensive versus much larger militaries which were very expensive. So it became economically costly to have a full war, right? These actors wouldn't just use psychological manipulation and non-kinetic means, they'd also use political means as well, and economic means. And the thing is with 4GW is that unlike every other kind of warfare, there are no clear battle lines, right? No uniforms, no battle lines, just insurgents and terrorists that are acting as individual units, decentralized. They have a mission and they're there to achieve that mission. So a good example of this is in Vietnam and 9/11. These are the best examples of fourth generational warfare. Now, the reason why we aren't at 4GW anymore is because of globalization and technology. The fact is that technology and its all-pervasiveness in technology has shifted how we perceive war totally. So now that the age of information is abundant, the way in which we conduct warfare has changed. So now the way we conduct warfare is non-kinetic. It's been very, very rare to see a kinetic battle. You have one every so often, but that, in my view, is just ways for the government to launder money, frankly. That's what we've seen over and over and over and over and over again. Small wars fought far away from home as ways to launder money from the government, but you didn't hear that from me. So, 5GW then. Now that you know what all of the other different generations of warfare are, let's get back to our fifth generation of warfare. So the big difference with fifth generational warfare is that it's all about social engineering. That is fifth generational warfare at its level. It's non-kinetic. There are no battle lines at all. And most importantly of all, you don't know a state of war is happening. So no war declared. No war declared. So you don't know a war is happening. You don't know where the battle lines are. It's non-kinetic. And it's all about psychology and social engineering. So 5GW prioritizes actions without direct physical force. So you'll find that all the operations signed 5GW are all about creating chaos. And they'll do it politically, they'll do it economically, socially, every single way that you can imagine, they'll do it. All to induce desired behaviours. And those desired behaviours create more chaos. That is the underlying assertion notion of fifth generation warfare, 5GW. So how does fifth generation warfare create chaos? Well, guess what? Via propaganda, storytelling, misinformation, disinformation, surveillance, and that's what I know is least, censorship. Do any of these look familiar to you? Do any of these look familiar to you? The whole point of fifth generational warfare is the utilisation, the ultimate utilisation of the information control lever to doubt everything around you, to call into question the very reality in which you live and in which you experience. 5GW uses propaganda, storytelling, misinformation, disinformation, surveillance and censorship to make you doubt your own reality, to make you doubt your place in the world. And if you have a whole society which has no idea what it's doing or why it's doing it, you create what? You create chaos. Why would you possibly need to have a kinetic war when you can convince others to do it for you? Why would you need to send your own people, your own army, into a place when you can just get the opposition to believe that they're fighting for their own good, destabilising a country, a society, a people? You wouldn't need to. This is the beauty of fifth generational warfare. It's totally asymmetric. There are no battle lines. There's no war declared, and it uses all of these tools, all this technology, all this information at this disposal to create chaos and disorder. And the more chaos and the more disorder that can be created, the more effective it will be when the place falls. It is totally ingenious and totally evil. And by the way, you don't even need to have state actors to do this. You know, you can have non-state groups, you can have proxies, you know, just individuals. And these are what we call shadow wars. Okay? And these shadow wars operate beyond cultural lines, beyond geographic lines, beyond cultural lines. They operate universally. And the most important thing of all is that not only is this operating everywhere, but you can't even identify who the enemy is. Because the people that are doing this, well, guess what? If the people that are doing this are over here, well, they might have another actor here, another actor here, another actor here, and another actor here, and they're the ones that are doing the chaos. So you'd have to go back to all of these people to try and understand who is actually doing this. And it's not only land, sea and air, it's all domains. It's cyber, it's space, it's economic, it's cultural, it's political. Every single domain of life is affected by fifth generational warfare. There's a conspiracy theory going around at the moment where the Western society's moral decline is a clear indication that we're in a fifth generational war. Because what is the easiest way to destabilise a country? Well, you attack the young. You attack the youth in a way they're not prepared for. Get them addicted to porn, get them addicted to gambling, and get them totally demoralised. So when I say 5GW is the ultimate form of information as a control lever, I really do mean it. To say that we're not in a state of war is to ignore the fact that fifth generational warfare exists. It does exist. It extends to all areas of human thought and development. I'll be honest with you, fifth generational warfare is a ginormous topic. It's massive. And I've only basically touched on it today to demonstrate to you the importance of understanding the power of information when compared to the other levers of power. But I'm certain that I'll probably do a session on fifth generational warfare, or a long video on fifth generational warfare. So I don't think it gets talked about enough. I don't think enough people understand that they are active combatants in a psychological war that they're not even aware of. And the more that you're able to understand your place in this fight, guys, you're in a war, right? You're in a fifth generational war. There's no doubt about it. You're being bombarded every single day with things that's going to try to demoralize you and disrupt who you are as a person, right? And the more you understand that, the more you can defend yourself against it. I'm sure at some point I'll make a long video on fifth generational warfare. But for now, all we need to understand is that fifth generational warfare is the ultimate current state of information as a control lever. So, let's recap. We've gone over money, religion, education, and information, as well as the important role of imagination in these four levers. But these four levers of power, each and every one of them, combines together to create what I believe is the ultimate enslavement paradigm. And that is two things: individualism and consumerism. So in the next video, I'm going to be doing a few things. I'm going to be going over how each one of these pillars has actively created a situation where individualism and consumerism fuels our society's ability to enslave everyday people and keep them locked in a state of servitude and slavery. And then I'm also going to finish this long series with choice. I'm going to explain to you how the lower working classes, the totally asleep people work, function, operate. I'm going to explain to you how the aware people which understand this game and play it really well, how they operate in each one of these four domains. And then I'm finally going to give you a third choice, a third way of being, where you understand the game and then you create your own game. And I call that the white pill. So I'm going to show you a blue pill, a red pill, and a white pill. And I'm going to, like I say, show you all of those things in the next video, which should be out probably in a month. Or I might release it sooner. I haven't quite made my mind up yet. So, if you want all this now, it's on my school community. It's totally free. It will be free forever. So, go on the description below. Join the school community. All of the videos will be there that you can watch and enjoy. Oh, and like and subscribe too. Okay. Thank you, guys. I'll see you soon in the next one. Take care. Bye for now.